For Radagast the Fourth became enamored of the many beasts and birds that dwelt in Middle-earth, and forsook elves and men, and spent his days among the wild creatures. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we will be looking at the character history of Radagast the Brown and theorizing what became of him. For while he is not quite as enigmatic as the Blue Wizards, he is still shrouded in much more mystery than Gandalf and Saruman. There will be some related articles and videos in the description and cards for more information. My friends, thank you all for joining me. I hope you all are doing well. Let's begin our tale. Radagast began as all the Ainur did, the Valar, Maiar, and some others who never came to Arda. He was brought into being through the thought of Iluvatar, and afterwards sang in the first music of the Ainur that brought Ea, the created universe, into being. During the Elder Days, Radagast was originally known as Iwendiel, meaning lover of birds in Quenya, a Maya who served Yavanna of the Ladies of the Valar, whose domain was the earth and all growing things. Of his deeds during the Elder Days we can discern little. It may be that he played some important part in the background of the story. However, Radagast, as it was with all the wizards or Astari, really came into the tale during the Third Age. Sometime after the reshaping of Arda during the downfall of Numenor, the Valar held a council, summoned by Manwë, for he was concerned for the free peoples of Middle-earth, and it was at this council that the Valar decided they would send emissaries to Middle-earth. One, Curumo, who would later become Saruman, was begged by Yavanna to take Iwendiel to Middle-earth, and he, likely begrudgingly, accepted. As it is told in the Unfinished Tales, it is unclear why Yavanna needed Radagast specifically to impose on Saruman, and that perhaps he neglected the mission given to him at large fits with the idea of him being specifically chosen by Yavanna, but towards the end of the video I'll propose some ideas about why and for what reason Radagast is what he is. Anyway, Iwendiel, or Radagast as he was later known, possibly meaning tender of beasts in Andunaik, or something else in the language of the men of the Vales of Anduin, would thus come with the other wizards into Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age, and Iwendiel arrived at the same time as Olorin, though he was lesser in power than Olorin and Curumo. Radagast would dress in brown and be known as the Brown Wizard, and it's possible that this is connected to the Old English word Radagast, meaning red-brown spirit. Gandalf would call him a master of shapes and changes of hue, so perhaps he had powers similar to shapeshifting, perhaps being akin to a druid or shaman in other fantasies. While Olorin, or Gandalf, would travel much in Middle-earth, Radagast would eventually settle at Rhosgobel, somewhere between the Carrock and Old Forest Road and the eaves of Western Greenwood, later named Mirkwood. Perhaps Radagast would be in the White Council, but it is difficult to know for sure, as Radagast would abrogate many of his responsibilities towards the Free Peoples, and care more for birds, beasts, and growing things than he did for the conflicts of elves and men. Now with that in mind, it makes sense why he came to dwell where he did. Rhosgobel was near a great many aspects of nature and far away from the great realms of men, though woodmen and Beornings dwelt nearby. Of course there was the great forest of Mirkwood, many birds and beasts that dwelt there, Beorn and his folk who had their affinity for bears, and the great eagles whose eyries were in the eastern misty mountains. Later on, Beorn and Radagast would even have a good friendship, and Beorn considered him to not be bad as far as wizards go. Now, even if Radagast was perhaps a member of the White Council, or perhaps not, he would attempt to aid his friends where he could, for after the meeting of 2851 of the Third Age, Radagast aided Saruman with birds and beasts who acted as spies on the Vales of Anduin, not knowing that Saruman was truly looking for the One Ring himself. Radagast may have also aided in the attack on Dol Guldur in 2941, for the darkness of Dol Guldur was a blight on the forest of Mirkwood, and was quite close to Radagast's home and friends as well. Later, after Sauron arose in the east, Radagast spoke with Saruman in Isengard in 3018, and Saruman said he would aid Gandalf if Gandalf felt the need, but Gandalf would have to ride for Isengard swiftly, or it would be too late. Saruman told Radagast the 9 Nazgul were abroad and were seeking the Shire, and thus Radagast left Isengard to look for the Shire himself, and Gandalf was in the north, though Radagast knew not where to look and did not travel often. But the two found each other not far from Bree, and Radagast relayed these tidings, wanting to aid his order. Gandalf thus planned to make for Saruman swiftly, but he first asked Radagast to send any birds and beasts to Orthanc if they found news concerning the matter at hand and the movements of the enemy, and Radagast assented, before riding off as if the 9 Nazgul themselves were after him. And so it was, as Gandalf told it during the Council of Elrond in the Fellowship of the Ring, that the Grey Wizard came to Orthanc and was betrayed by Saruman, who hid his scorn of Radagast no longer. For Saruman called him a bird-tamer, simple, and a fool, but one who played the part given to him. to get Gandalf to Isengard. And after Gandalf was betrayed and locked atop Orthanc, he wondered if Radagast too had betrayed him, but he decided Radagast must not have known about Sauron's intentions, as Gandalf had detected no lie within Radagast, and thus Radagast the messenger must have also been deceived. The truth of this was proven when Gwaihir, the Windlord, who had news, was sent to Orthanc by Radagast as he told Gandalf he would do, and Gwaihir rescued Gandalf from his imprisonment. After this, nothing really is known about Radagast for certain, for after the Council of Elrond, elven scouts went forth from Rivendell, and some even went to Ruscabel to find that Radagast was not there. However, what he was dealing with in 3019 could surely be guessed at, for when Frodo stood atop Amunhen with the One Ring upon his finger, he looked out and saw that the lands of the Beornings were aflame. War had come to the lands of Rovanion, and it's likely that Radagast had to defend the nature of his own lands. I go into what befell the North during The Lord of the Rings in a different video, but ultimately it may be assumed that he played some role in those events. But overall, Radagast is counted amongst the 4 wizards who failed in their mission given to them by the Valar, for Gandalf was the only one who succeeded. Perhaps this was due to Radagast's nature, for he had a gentle and honest heart, but was not one for speaking with many people or traveling very far. Or perhaps he did what Yavanna truly wanted him to do, tend to the nature of Middle-earth, and did not fail entirely. But either way, it seems he stayed in Middle-earth if he survived the War of the Ring, and I do not know what became of him. Perhaps he became a spirit of nature, or some enigma of old days that would survive into Middle-earth's future in the forest, unless he did sail to Valinor at some point. Now to return to some thoughts concerning Radagast at large and why he was even needed, and why Yavanna wanted him to go to Middle-earth. And I think it has something to do with the nature of Yavanna and how Tolkien writes fantastical creatures of nature. Yavanna, no matter the other politics or peoples of the world, wanted nature to be represented and to have champions. To protect the forests from the dwarves of her husband Aule, she prayed for Ents. So it makes sense that perhaps Radagast was meant to serve as the representative of nature on this mission of the Astari, for that too was a victim of the evils of Sauron. And Tolkien writes such champions of nature as usually pretty neutral but overall good, and less active players in the grand scheme of things, like Treebeard, who came to action when it was absolutely necessary to save Fangorn, but did not go on to keep fighting in the War of the Ring. It seems Radagast follows a similar character arc, being one of Tolkien's love letters to nature, where he is active only when and where he needs to be, while passively helping nature, but won't be too active in the greater story beyond that. It is fascinating, and I do wonder what became of Radagast the Brown, for he too is enigmatic in nature as well. That's where I turn the question to you all. What do you think became of Radagast the Brown? Let me know in the comments below. And that is where we will end our tale on the Brown Wizard. From the tale of Radagast, we see that we should champion nature and its creatures, for such things do not always have voices or defenders, and are at times forgotten victims of greater evils. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed today's episode on Radagast the Brown. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts, questions, additions, and corrections on the history of Radagast? Let me know in the comments below. Radagast is such an interesting character whose powers and fates are mysterious and fascinating to think about. I want to shout out our Valar tier patrons: Adrian De La Torre, Chris Ortner, Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralik, Blair Scout, and Tobias Goldner, Ryan Ramsey, Merton, John Hume, Tom Bombadil, Ridgy93, Jennifer Wood, Sam McBee, Matt Sabatch, Quantum Catalyst, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, and Ben Gardner, and all of our patrons. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for the support. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with a video on the settlements of the elves in the First Age. Everyone, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.